Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Yak Gadget, for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com. Eastport Marina, on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake, for all your lodging, kayaking, and fishing needs. Go to eastport.info. Now let's get this show started.
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad Hurlbus. And tonight we have on Ryan Eder, and we're going to bring him right in. He is a Labrador Retriever and Kennel operation out of Wisconsin here. So welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about tonight's episode because we're going to talk puppies because everybody loves puppies, but it's such a, I don't know, it's like I don't know how to describe it because there's a lot of anticipation and there's a lot of like fear there when you put your deposit down on the dog after you've done the research on breeding and making sure you're going through a responsible breeder and making sure like there's good lines. And then there's the puppy selection. So we're on a touch base on that, maybe touch base a little bit on some breeding stuff. But before we jump into all of that, let's hear how you got started with hunting, which obviously led you into dog training. So did you grow up hunting with family? Did you take it on yourself?
I took it on myself. I had some guidance from friends. Oddly enough, both my grandfathers were very avid duck hunters. Where I live in Northeast Illinois, where I'm from, rather, I moved just over the border recently into Wisconsin, but we have what's called the chain of lakes. And you're talking about, 6 or 7 inland lakes that are connected. And in the 50s and 60s, the lily pads, the habitat, the food source was there. It was just a duck haven. So it was a destination truly for waterfowl hunting. So both my grandfathers grew up doing it. Neither one of my parents or any of my uncles were real serious hunters. So by the time, when I say we, all of my cousins, my siblings, we didn't hunt. We played sports, Right. So I got into 18, 19 years of age, had some friends that hunted. They asked me to come with. Oddly enough, I was training dogs long before I was ever hunting.
Really?
So I would be working dogs for pheasant hunters, for waterfowl hunters, and I wasn't even picking up a shotgun, killing the birds myself. So
Sure.
I have a very non-conventional road to, what I do now. But, once you hunt with a dog, it's pretty hard to shake it. You do it more and more. You try to find we look for new species, new locations to go hunt. And of course, I'm sure we'll touch a little bit just on hunt testing or, training groups that are involved in the dog sports. And yeah, so I actually got started hunting because of dog training. I didn't get into dogs because of hunting.
Wow. Yeah, it might be the first time I've actually heard that before. I know, like, I'm a late onset hunter. My grandparents hunted as well, or at least my one grandfather did. Neither my parents hunted. No one in my direct family hunted. So I basically started waterfowl hunting because I rented a farmhouse and the back corner of the field was flooded. And I randomly talked to the farmer. I'm like, hey, can I hunt here? He goes, I don't care. I'm like, oh, I probably should go through hunter safety and figure out how to do this.
I wish every farmer said that when I knocked on their door. You get into dog training and it's like, not only are we looking for land to hunt on, but we need land to train on, So
Right.
now year round, you're knocking on door. It's no different than looking for fields or ponds or whatever. So yeah, definitely kind of an ass backwards path to what I do, but nonetheless, it works. We got a lot of dogs out there that pick up a lot of birds each year, and it's really fun as a breeder just because you kind of feel like the mad scientist. If I breed this dog to this dog, I'm going to get this. And it's so much fun to watch them develop and, become what you hoped they would. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to your questions and the things you want to talk about, and we'll dive in.
Well, let's just start right there. Let's just start with some breeding, some background knowledge on breeding. I'm not an expert on any of this by any means. I've never done anything with breeding before. What do you look for? I mean, now, I guess it depends what qualities you're looking for, but let's take this from a new dog owner's perspective. What are some good baselines for a good dog? Like, And I know that's a loaded question because it depends what you're looking for, right? But what are some good baselines, I guess I would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand what you're asking, and it makes sense. For starters, in my case, I'm dealing with a breed that is the most popular breed in the country. I mean, if you look at the AKC registration numbers, Labs are number one. The Goldens linger number 2, 3, or 4, depending on the year. And just growing up where I did, everybody had a Lab. I mean, it was just what I fell back onto because it was familiarity for me. And as a breed in general, you're talking about a great family dog. You're talking about dogs they're known for great temperaments. I mean, certainly there are bad examples of every breed out there. Uh, I was around when I got into dogs because I was into animals my whole life. I had pets. I had everything under the sun. But when I met a local dog breeder, I was 14, 15 years old. I was going there to help him with his kennel and his litters before I had a driver's license. My parents would drop me off there for a few hours and I would do kennel chores and help with the puppies. So I got hands-on experience right away, just being around. People think being a breeder is just sitting around playing with puppies. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's a lot more than the puppies are the fun part. Sure. But there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into the facility, that goes into the upkeep of your breeding animals in general, particularly your females, whether it's their nutrition, their vitamins, supplements. Your facility needs to be set up to be warmer than usual. In my experience, I've found I like to keep the females kind of in their own little whelping area, not around the general population of other dogs because, it's a high stress environment for them. We want to keep those puppies safe. But when you say, what are you looking for? I mean, to me, number one, I don't care if you're in the hunting world or the show world, which the breed has kind of done two different, paths, in my opinion. Right. I think the retrievers are probably the Goldens and the Labs might be the worst in terms of, here's your show dogs, here's your field dogs. They've really, versus other breeds like a Brittany or something, you can have dual champions still. But
you see that, like, not to cut you, like, you actually see that quite a bit in griffs right now, like wire hair grip-ons. That's what I have, and you can see it a lot in their coat, because, like, if you get back to the true hunting origins, like, the wired hair coat is a lot tighter than the show coat.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So when you look at, like, if you go back to, like, what is that, the Corco Griffin or whatever it is, like, it's a tighter coat, and, like, my Gareth has a pretty long coat that takes a lot of maintenance. But those original true hunting coats that are tighter require far less maintenance for hunting. So you can kind of see that split even in the breed I'm currently running with. Like, there's a show breed that have this long, and her coat looks great. And, like, a tight coat looks good too. It's just a different appearance. And that show coat has that long flowing fur, which is terrible when you get into burst.
Amen, man. I got into Goldens, and let me tell you, that's, if they even duck in the timber for 1 second to look for a pheasant at the club, I have 45 minutes of combing and brushing when I get home, and it's fine. But the Labs are definitely a little easier. But
I always joke about that, like, because I'm a big grouse hunter. Sure. So I started with a Lab. My Lab was super high strung. Like, he was pretty steady, but he didn't want to sit. Like, he wanted to run. Like, he was just. So which led me to grouse hunting, and he shined. He loved it. He was a far better grouse dog than he ever was a duck dog, and it really drove my grouse hunting passion. But it went from a 5-minute tick check on the tailgate to 45 minutes of combing, and my buddy's on his second whiskey like, hey, you ever going to join me?
Oh, man.
That's the difference.
It's so true. Well, but imagine a guy with an English setter or, some of the Spaniels. It's even worse. Trust me. I have those here too sometimes. And yeah, but really, regardless of application, regardless of breed, you have to, number one, you have to look at health and wellness of the animals you're breeding. I mean, I don't care what it is, poodles, it makes no difference. And in today's day and age, whereas people who have mentored me, who were doing this back in the 60s, the 70s, and so on, our health testing has come a long way. And really now, I mean, in the era of social media, you can look at 50 kennels in an hour and look at their dogs, their litters. And unfortunately, some people can put on a great show on social media when they're really not the quality they portray. But the bottom line is health testing is so easy to do. It's expensive, but it's not. If you look at what they really, put into these dogs, if you're a breeder not health testing anymore, you're doing it wrong. But I came from an era where that stuff was never discussed. So there's a learning curve with all of it for us breeders too. I'm sure somebody could go find a breeding I did before we did 42 different, genetic panel tests on them. But so health and wellness for sure. I think
and that's something you've learned on the way, right? I mean,
100%.
Like you said, there might be a litter back before you knew this knowledge, and now you see the benefits of this health testing.
Luckily, none of it's ever come back in a bad way. Meaning, because your anti-breeding crowd or just your health clearance police in general will say, well, you didn't check this on this dog, but that whole litter is okay. Because you don't want to put dogs in the world knowingly that they're going to have issues, and I don't think any breeder does. Any mistakes I ever made were honest at the time, but we stand behind our dogs, we back our dogs. I'd be there for that client. What their next 2 dogs could be on me if they had a problem. We haven't had it. We haven't had it. Knock on wood.
And that's the weird thing with genetics, right? Like you can breed 2 great dogs, and you can have 11 great puppies, but something with that 12th one just wasn't quite right. I mean, that happened for my buddy's English. His setter is deaf, 100% deaf. Every other dog in that litter is fine. That it's a very well-known kennel. Every dog they've ever had never had a deaf one, but his was deaf from birth. I mean, sometimes weird, even with health clearances, sometimes weird things can just happen.
Oh, I'll be the first to tell you, and I'll sound anti-health clearance, and I'm not, but they are not the end all be all, as you just said. And it drives me nuts because like the OFA, the Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, we look at their hips, their elbows, their eyes. You can't not do it. Of course, I understand that, but you can breed excellent hips, normal elbows, normal eyes, and half a litter could have bad hips. And you sit there and point at your OFA certification, go, I don't know why this happened. Breeding, it really does take I don't know the word that'd be appropriate to broadcast on there, but when you breed, it's risky. It is risky, and you are rolling the dice. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, and maybe I can put this into perspective answering your questions, is you're responsible for producing somebody's next family member. It's a pretty big responsibility. It really is. And that person for the next 12 or 15 years, good or bad, their dog came from you. So the liability, the responsibility, the accountability is it couldn't be higher, and it's something we take pretty seriously. And if you really think about it, the average person gets in front of a whelping box and picks a puppy how many times in their life? 3, 4 at the high end,
right?
At least in your adult life. I mean, maybe kids, you grew up with a dog, but if you're 5 years old, how well do you remember that experience? I get even
if you do remember the experience, you don't know what you're looking at. You would just have been overwhelmed by a whole bunch of little balls of joy.
Right. And you weren't a homeowner. You weren't training that dog for the field at 5 years old. You weren't asking those types of questions. So, I mean, the experience is different when you're 15 to 20 to 25, getting your first or second dog. And so, I think you're so accountable as a breeder if you're a good one. And you do business, with ethics and morals, of course, which I think most do, honestly. It's too much work to breed these dogs if your intentions aren't there. And the financial reward is there once in a while when it goes well. But believe me, things go wrong. And so people that think a breeder's sitting back counting money, it's not happening like that. But, I'm trying to stay on task with your questions the best I can. But
nope, we're good.
So health and wellness, I think and this is a big one that I'll be short-winded about, but being honest about your application. Sure. What do I want a dog for? I've made this mistake so many times. I'm 36 years old, but I have made this mistake more than most 50 or 60-year-olds. Is I justify a dog sometimes based on an idea that I'm only going to, what I'm really going to duck hunt is 5 times a year, 10 times a year. But in my mind, I need that, that upper echelon, competitive type of dog. And I still agree with that. I think the genetics need to be there. But what I will say is don't get a border collie if you want to sit on the couch and watch TV kind of thing. And I think with these sporting breeds, that's a huge topic that comes up a lot because I'm in the world of field bred retrievers, and they're phenomenal pets. They are. They're great family dogs. They're great house dogs. They are intelligent, and they also have drive. They also want to do something. And so I think it's my responsibility and the people that help me in my kennel, it's our responsibility to make sure that our clients, number one, understand that this is not a show-bred Labrador, for lack of a better term. We're breeding dogs that are supposed to want to retrieve. They're supposed to want to have, they have prey drive, they have working drive, and they're not going to be okay with 8 hours a day in the crate and no exercise and no mental stimulation. And they will be at some point once they're trained and developed. But so health and wellness, genetics, application, those are all things that I think you have to immediately look at as a breeder and kind of whatever your identity is as a program, stick to it, be consistent. Because you got to be able to speak to your clients about what it is you're breeding and what you should expect from one of our dogs. Do I dabble in other things? Do I have a conformation golden in my kennel? Yes, I do. Great house dog. She's great with my kids. She's a lot calmer. Believe me, she's not so calm that it's a world of difference. It's still a young retriever, but
Sure.
We've recognized, and I'm a marketing guy by trade, so what I do in my corporate job kind of translates to my kennel. I look at who's buying dogs from us, and I try to make sure I'm aligning myself with the best dog, right? I mean, I want 100% placement rate. I don't want dogs coming back. I don't want dogs going into situations where they're not being given that opportunity to be what they should be. And so we really take it seriously, especially some of the people that help us in the kennel, the people that help me train, part of our team. They participate in other sports. They're in the dock diving. They're in the agility. They're in the nose work, the barn hunt. We even have some dogs that are learning shed hunting right now. And all that really does is give that dog a job. It's a constructive way to go outside, give that dog exercise, maybe get exercise yourself. Honestly, I mean, my dogs are the reason I get steps in some days. Otherwise I wouldn't.
Sure.
But, I'm not trying to be unorganized with my answer, but, as a breeder, what am I looking for? I mean, I want to give people a dog that's healthy. I want to give people a dog that's trainable. And then ultimately I have to do a better job myself of just making sure that that client is getting the right set of genetics to begin with. You stack the deck in people's favor the best that you can, right? I mean,
right. Absolutely.
With your dog too, you had to talk to your breeder. You're with a pretty popular breed there. I mean, they're all over the place, upland game especially, but they're a versatile breed.
They're a versatile breed. They're getting more popular. Mine's a little bit unique situation. I rehomed her at 6 from a home that I wouldn't say was abusive, but she was slightly neglected. She's got her own special case of circumstances and issues that we're working through. I mean, she's older now, but yeah, but you're right. Griffs are definitely becoming a far more popular breed than they were.
But I come from the shoot to retrieve world, the time trials, kill 3 birds, fastest time wins kind of thing. And I got to tell you, I judged a ton of those dogs.
Sure.
And I for a while I was the guy, a wire hair, a Griffon, it's all the same. Well, no, it's not. Shame on me.
They are slightly different. I mean, I guess in like the lab world would be like, it's kind of saying like a Chessie's the same. And that's kind of like a lab to Chessie kind of to me is like the Griff versus a Drathar. Like it's kind of like, I'd go with Drathar with the Chessies. Yeah, I'd go with that one. That's
probably actually an accurate comparison. I don't want to tick anybody off, but
no, exactly. But
I learned on Chessie, so I'm allowed to be critical. But yeah, I mean, we went with, I breed these breeds because in my life, that's what I was around. It's what I know. When I got into the shoot to retrieve game and I was going to grad school at Iowa State and I was living in Iowa, I got exposed to the pointing dog world. And you know what? I love the German short hair. I love English setters. I own each. I mean, we guide at local preserves, and a lot of clients request pointing dogs because there's a safety element, and there are reasons why you'd want a pointer over a flusher in certain situations. So as someone who is involved in several breeds now at this point in my, let's just call it a dog career, if you will,
sure.
No matter what you're breeding, your goals as a breeder is just to stay consistent. And probably the hardest part about being a breeder, this is still on topic here, is having that discipline to say, this dog isn't what I want to produce.
Sure.
This dog, ultimately, as great of a dog as it is, or, and you kind of do that thing that I talk about, being honest with yourself about what application is your dog going to fill for you. You have to be honest with yourself about the dogs in your kennel. There's a Wisconsin breeder. His name it's Josh Miller. He's Riverstone Kennels, and he's doing an awesome job right now because he has a podcast. I think he's with Sport Dog still, if I'm not mistaken. I met him at pre-grand training a couple years ago, and I've followed his podcast and his kennel. He's English Lab guy, but he goes overseas and gets his dogs. I mean, he's all in, man. It's impressive. It's impressive. But he said something on his podcast that it stuck with me it's been at least a year. He said a lot of breeders breed the dogs that they have, not the dogs that they want.
Sure.
And I sat back in my chair like, wow, if that's not the truth, I don't know what is, because if you think about it, and I'm lumping myself into this at times. I don't ever breed a dog that I knowingly hate. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but I've probably been lenient a time or two because, you go all in. We live on 10 acres. We bought a place that had a building on it. I mean, we really invested. For us. We didn't come from situations where it was easy to do this. We really worked hard to get this place and put this plan into motion. So, when you have 30 names on a deposit list and you've got good dogs, the attitude is, well, you know what, this makes sense to do the breeding right now. Let's do it. But I could see a lot of people, breeding for the business end. And I get that. I'm not going to sit here and fault anybody. I mean, people make a living and pay their bills how they pay their bills. As long as you're not breeding, junk or bad health or knowingly doing something unethical, I can kind of see that. But when he said that, it was profound.
They're still putting out a quality dog, but I understand
exactly
the whole thing behind that. Like, if you're striving for a certain type of dog, you might not be able to get that with the dogs you have.
That's right. And for us, we don't have a 45 dog facility. My place, even if I were to go overboard, I mean, we could probably handle 20 dogs.
All right.
And at 20, it's a lot, probably 17, 18 would be perfect. We do not keep 2 dogs in a kennel ever. And we have some dogs that just at night need to be in a crate overnight because if they're in a big kennel, they might be messy or whatever. So, we have reasons for how we do it. But when you're talking about limited space, when you say, nope, this dog's out, got to get a new one. Well, if you go get a puppy, it's a couple of years before that dog can contribute to your breeding program. So there's a lot of reasons
why that dog actually is going to make it into your breeding program also.
Exactly.
And there's that whole thing, because as you said, we're going to stack the deck. There's going to be genetics. There's going to be health. You're going to breed for a certain temperament, and that's going to fit what you hopefully want in your profile. But you're not going to really know until you start training and see what this dog is capable of.
I mean, you're spot on, and I can push the envelope just a little further. You don't always know right away anyway.
Sure.
Meaning when you start training, the first 6 months of training could be really discouraging. The dog's a slow maturing dog. The dog's just taking a while to get their bearings. But then at a year and a half, they start coming on and you're going, I mean, this is a good dog. But they don't all show you the cards at the same time either. So now, I mean, everything I just said is true. And then you've got the wild cards where there's dogs I've sold that at 3 years old, I regret that decision. And there's dogs that are rock stars up until they're a year and a half going through the steps. And then all of a sudden they start plateauing and who knows? I mean, they go backwards or just, some of these dogs are just what makes them special is not just their skills or their intelligence, but think about the drive they have day in and day out to do their work. I mean, their enthusiasm and their will is just, it's a working dog. There's nothing like it. You know what I mean? No matter what the breed, what the application is, what their job is. Some dogs just don't have that fire in them to do that work on a day in and day out basis. And honestly, for a lot of people, that's probably okay.
For your at-home weekend hunter, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is because having a good off switch for probably 70%, 60% of the people out there, that off switch is just as important. Minimum. And right, I'm probably going low because I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? But having
you're
that
stroking
off switch,
all of us family guys that want to hunt 40% of the time and don't.
But that off switch can be just as important as that drive in the field.
It's more important.
Sure.
It's more important. And it took me 5 years to learn that as a breeder. Honestly, I mean, this whole podcast could be, don't fall in love with pedigree. Don't overshoot, what you think you're going to do. Do you need a puppy out of 2 AKC field champions? I mean, it doesn't hurt. And
sure.
when that's the litter that I'm looking at, but I have to be honest with you. Some of the best dogs that I have, some of the best dogs that I've ever trained, they're out of 2 hunt test dogs that are full-time house dogs and have what you just said, but don't misconstrue that to believe that some of your top all-age field trial level dogs in the retriever world specifically are not phenomenal house dogs, because that would be a lie.
Sure.
What I have found, Brad, honestly, is that the people that do things right, the people that put the time in and develop that puppy the right way and stay consistent and dedicated, just like anything else in life, just go figure. It turns out pretty good usually, and so some of your top dogs in any discipline, the common denominator, other than the obvious, genetics are probably good, et cetera. It's good owners. It's people that are dedicated to that dog and see it through. And, I don't think you need to have a field champion to have a great puppy, but, that field champion withstood years and years of training and development and being challenged. And it developed into a dog that could communicate with a handler on a level that would blow people's minds. And just the skills are second to none, but it probably still sleeps in bed with them at night, honestly. So they can all do it. And that's why I said, be honest with yourself about what it is you want in your dog, because everybody loves the idea of a dog. Not everybody loves the reality of a dog, which is, everyone jokes about young kids. Can we get this puppy, Dad? Can we get this puppy? And 2 weeks later, they're over it. Well, even us as adults that put 6 months of research in and go put a deposit down and go through the process, a year into it, you're like, man, it's a lot. We spend, I have young kids now. I mean, I don't even know how many hours a year I'm in a field, but every night after work, every Saturday, every Sunday, we were training. And then we're on the road at these hunt tests. And anyone that'll tell you about a hunt test, I don't know, do you do it with your pointing dog?
I have not. I did train with, so when I first rescued my lab was also a rescue. I got him at a year old. Not really rescue, another rehome type of deal. I don't know. I wound up driving out of state to get dogs that need a home. Just kind of my forte, I guess.
Why not?
I wound up having no idea what I was doing, trying to figure out this crazy dog that had 0 for basic obedience, and trying to wrap my head around this. And I saw a guy in the middle of duck season training his lab in a field at a park, doing blind retrieve. So I stopped and talked to him. He turned out he was the president of a local HRC.
Wow.
So I wound up actually training under his wing in his own personal time for months, him showing me different ways. And we both came to the same conclusion. We just had to back it all the way up to think this dog was like a puppy. And we started with basic obedience from the beginning. So I got really lucky. So I never got into the test world at that point in time. I didn't have enough time to really dedicate to it between work and everything else. And I had my 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the afternoon to do my basic. And then I lived on the farm at that time. So we did a bunch of running and conditioning and a bunch of stuff like that. But I didn't have the time or really even the financial means at that point to join a club. And then and they're not even that expensive. But at that point in time for me, it was kind of a lot of money to go join a club and then drive an hour to their facility, the gas, the fuel. I just, at that point in my life, I couldn't afford it. So I never got into the hunt tests. That's really my reason. My whole long-winded explanation there is the timing just never really worked out. But training with him, I could the benefits of a club are just so big. If you're looking to train on your own,
I fully endorse joining a club if you can. We are not part of a club in terms of being members, because just the way that I came up in this sport, there's 10 or 11 of us who are literally day in and day out training together. So we kind of have our own club.
Sure.
And we could be criticized for not joining a real club and volunteering. And, and I own that, but we're running a breeding program. We're running a kennel. So our priority is our dogs. That's selfish, but we don't have brood bitches in our kennel. Every dog in our kennel can run at least an intermediate level in some discipline, if not a finished level or a master level. And they hunt and they guide at preserves, and it's real. I mean, you can come here and watch any one of my dogs, and I'll demo all of them if you want. I don't have, so that takes time, and so I don't spend my weekends volunteering at events. And now I have 2 small kids, so my hunt test days have definitely been less than usual. But my point to you when I said it was, if you're running 2 dogs in an AKC master test, and that's, I mean, I love it. I absolutely love the game, but you're sitting there Friday, Saturday, Sunday to run 3 series. So, I mean, in total, you're running your dog like 12 to 13 minutes sometimes total for the weekend if you pass each series. And you sit there for 3 days, you know, and it could be 90 degrees out. And I can sit in a camping chair and watch 45, 50 dogs run. That's fine. I love it. But it's not for everyone. And you know, when you're in the breeding side of things, these titles do matter. I think it's important to prove what a dog, what kind of level they can run on. I think it shows trainability. I think it shows a lot of qualities that, if you read between the lines, translate into a good pet as well. But for a guy that wants to duck hunt, I think what you said is more important. I think let's get the right puppy. Let's find the right breeder, the right support system to help you get started. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then a club or a group of people who are dedicated at training. At minimum, that's the answer. You know, a higher trained field dog is a more enjoyable pet at the end of the day. It's a better trained animal, period.
Agreed. I mean, like the basic obedience, like just as simple as the basic obedience, the level we strive for basic with a dog, with a hunting breed, is a lot of times far more than any other like house pet you're ever going to see. Which makes for, I mean, it's as simple as how many times has someone gone over to someone's house and their dog ran out the front door and they can't get the dog back? That's not going to happen with a hunting dog. Like,
no.
If you have a solid basic obedience, you're either going to sit the dog or bring it right back. It doesn't really matter, but the dog's going to listen to you, or the dog's not going to run out the door to begin with. I mean, it depends. Like,
I mean, and not to beat a dead horse here, but I just went to Kansas in January. And, you know, I have a couple pointing dogs, as I've alluded to here. And I really wanted a chance to turn them loose and watch them run in open country and look for quail. And granted, I don't have wild quail here, so that's much harder than it sounds with dogs that don't get to see a lot of quail. You know, you do it in training, but it's not the same thing. But I mean, I was staying at a lodge right on the main drag of a town in Kansas where there's just trucks and cars going by like crazy. And I have an English pointer out, just going to the bathroom, eating, drink, whatever I have to do at night, chores wise, before we go to bed. That's a dog that's kind of known for, you know, running off and never coming back. And that dog is just sitting at my side, going to the bathroom, doing her thing, listening, under complete control. Because why? Well, because she's been trained, you know, and because if you're going to be on the road, you know, you're going to be, whether you're a hunter or a competitor or a hunt tester, it doesn't matter. You're going to be in a little postage stamp lot of grass trying to get your dog to go to the bathroom at a motel at 9:30 at night. And that's pretty hard to do when they aren't, you know, trained to a certain level. I mean, I can walk my dogs into a hotel lobby and get a room, you know, to run a test or a trial the next morning. And so that's what's so cool about this sport is we focus so much on the field, but honestly, just the level of enjoyment of a pet that, as you said, just listens and is obedient. And not only because they've been trained to, but because they're that bonded with you from all the work and the time.
And that's a huge thing too, is that bond. I mean, like when I rehomed my Griff at 6, that's the first thing we went to just a basic obedience refreshers. And that was really the best way I could think in my mind is to create that bond between us, is just that consistent training, just her and I, knowing, so that way there she learned what I expected of her. I got a good read on what her abilities were, and we built off of that, and we created that bond much later in life. And that bond is as strong as it was with I got my lab at a year. I mean, just from that repetitive training.
No doubt about it. And so like I said, I mean, to me, we're starting something here this spring in April. We have this, you know, Upland Academy or Gun Dog Academy, whatever you want to call it, where we work with a local preserve that I'm a member at and that we hunt at all year, and we use their grounds, and we're able to have birds on hand. And, you know, we really try to get a lot of our clients out in kind of a group setting. And the whole idea is really puppy basics, but this way we can help everybody with that early stage of group socialization, get them out in the cover, get them on, bird and gun intro type of stuff, which is one of the most feared steps in all of dog training. And so if we can help people get through that, I mean, honestly, if you have a dog that will retrieve birds, gunfire doesn't bother them, the prey drive is there, depending on what level of standards you have, they're kind of ready to hunt if you're just kind of a meat dog, weekend hunter, because that's the common gun dog. I mean, if you go out to a duck blind across the country in December and start looking at everybody's retrievers, what percentage of them are AKC master hunters, hunting retriever champions in the HRC? How many of them ran the Grand? I mean, you're talking a fraction.
Sure.
There's a ton of them that are just, they're like chained to the blind. They shoot the ducks and they unhook the dog and let them go. And that's very common. So my point is, if the dog's not afraid of the gun, retrieves, it has all that basics, at least now our clients are going out and hunting with a dog that's at least, it's safe to have them out there, I guess. I mean, when I say safe, you need some obedience, you need control, but
right.
So we're putting that together. And a lot of the questions I get are, well, I'm not a hunter. And I'm like, I don't care. There's nothing wrong with your dog being introduced to birds and guns. If anything, it's just a socialization thing. They're going to be more confident. They're going to be more environmentally sound. I mean, that's a benefit to you in a household that has nothing to do with if you hunt or not. And so to me, it's just dogs need jobs. Dogs need dedicated owners. Dogs need activity, and it's not just physical activity. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to fence in my yard and turn the dog loose for 3 hours and he'll just sleep all night. Well, maybe, but I doubt it.
Because they don't get that mental stimulation.
Right.
I mean, they'll play by themselves a little bit, right? They'll run around a little bit, maybe chase.
Yeah, but
chase
it doesn't work.
But no, I mean, you need that mental stimulation is what really wears a dog out, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah,
I mean,
hide their food around, hide their toys. That's what shed hunt. I mean, bird hunting and shed hunting are not that different. You're
right.
quartering an area. You're looking for a scent that you're kind of imprinted on, and certainly a bird is a different reaction once you find it. But that kind of thing, I mean, I tell people all the time, and I went to school for a long time with a master's and everything, so it's just a fitting analogy. But the days I was the most tired, it wasn't when I had practice or training or the gym. It was when I sat in 4 classes in a row and just had to think and listen, and I think dogs are very similar. But nonetheless, I just think the field is my outlet, of course. And I'm just kind of, I live in that arena, but, go do dock diving. I don't care what you do. Just get into a sport, get into an activity and take your handling to another level. And you won't regret it. I mean, you just won't.
Yeah, because you also, like we said, you create that bond. You get a dog that's just a better behaved dog. And a tired dog is a happy dog, in my opinion, right? A tired dog isn't a destructive dog. Like, I see people like, oh, my dog's doing, I'm like, when was the last time you actually exercised your dog? Well, I take him for a walk. I'm like, well, that's good. When was the last time you gave him a challenge though? When was the last time you tried to teach him something new and really tried to make this dog think and strive to something different? Well, we haven't done that since since I taught him sit. Well, teach him a new skill. Work with your dog.
Well, and you're hitting on the next step with just puppies in general. I mean, it's truly amazing. And granted, in the dog training world, I'm still probably on the middle to younger side of the equation, but look at what they're doing with puppies now. I mean, it used to be, especially the old school gun dog guys, it was get a well-bred puppy for sure, buy the best genetics you can afford. I think that advice still holds true, but you put it in a kennel for 6 months, and then when it's got its adult teeth and it's older, then we'll start getting it out and seeing what it's made of. Well, I mean, anymore, what they have 4 and 5 month old puppies doing is, to most people, beyond finished level obedience. And these puppies are capable of incredible. I mean, and that's probably my biggest demise, is just a full-time worker with a family and a kennel and, just making time for all the dogs in general, let alone new puppies when you're training 2 or 3 of them. And it's that time in the living room, just teaching them and shaping their behavior and the idea of how we use treats. And that's a whole nother conversation. I can't even go through I don't even know how to cliff note that for you.
Right. Right.
These puppies are getting treated for stuff.
So let's touch base on that just a little bit. So
yeah,
you kind of figured out, you selected your breeder. You're working with a breeder that's established and has some sort of health clearances and things along those lines. And they're dedicated to a program, right? Let's just leave it as they're dedicated to a program. You get your puppy home. when do you start the training? Like, do you start right away, or
Yeah.
do you like let him be a puppy for a little bit?
Well, the answer is both. I mean,
Sure.
The level of standards that you have are when I say low, what I'm saying is that puppy's not going to know 6 commands necessarily in a day, but loosely speaking, if you understand how to, we just use their kibble as a treat. And so the first thing is to just get that puppy to understand that they can get food right out of your hand. They start focusing on you more. They start following your hand around, following that food. And with that, think about how powerful that is. Think about getting a puppy up onto a place board. If they follow the food up there and then they get a piece of kibble every time all 4 paws are on that place board, it's not long before the puppy runs and stands there waiting for a reward. And
Sure.
I'm talking 8 weeks old, 7 weeks old. If you think about that, we just shaped a behavior without really training. I didn't give a command yet. I'm just shaping behavior using his food drive and curiosity more than anything, and willingness to work for it. And then when you raise your hand up, they kind of naturally put their butt down and sit. And now you've got place and sit, and then they can lay down for the treat. And I don't even know that I'm using commands for the first few weeks. So when you say, when do I start? Right away. Am I doing finished level, commands?
Right.
Sooner than you might think, but no, not right away. You're housebreaking, you're crate training, you're getting the lay of the land, the routine down.
And that's an important one before we skip too much past. I mean, that's an important one some people are hesitant about, but crate training is huge.
I mean, I don't understand how people don't. I'm sounding one-dimensional, but other than the obvious housebreaking, okay, they don't want to soil where they're sleeping. So if they're in a smaller crate where they can turn around, lay down, be safe, comfortable, etc., we need to develop that routine of, okay, you go potty when we go outside, and there's more to that. But the next thing is, number two, their safety.
Right.
They'll chew, they'll destroy, they can ingest things. And you can say you're watching your puppy, but you know how easy it is to turn your head for 1 second and they're 4 rooms away eating Lord knows what.
Right.
You're talking thousands of dollars at a veterinarian. You're talking potential health hazards, death, illness, major surgeries. So the crate is definitely a way to keep your puppy safe when you're not supervising, especially. I am not a dog behaviorist, okay, but anyone that trains dogs is sort of in tune with behavior related issues. Dogs that do not learn how to go in a crate, turn it off, self-soothe a little bit, calm down. You're talking separation anxiety. You're talking dogs that they learn how to be the ringleader real quick. If they whine and bark, they get let out. So you're reinforcing this bossy behavior, this demanding behavior of a dog. And I'm not using correct terms, but I think
right.
So the crate is a great way to teach a dog, hey, I know I'm right here in the kitchen, whether you're reading your mail or whatever, and the dog sees you and he starts whining. Well, sorry, buddy, you're on a routine. In about 20 minutes, we're going outside, but you don't give in to that. Well, that dog learns to just kind of calm down, lay down. Even if you're in the room, they're not barking and going crazy, and you can leave them for an hour or two at a time and go to the grocery store, run some errands. But nobody wants to do that. Oh, I can't lock my dog up. It's cruel. Well, a year later, you have a dog that you can't leave alone.
Right.
They don't want to be without you. And that all sounds great and wonderful. But if they're barking or being destructive or doing other negative things, that all kind of goes back to crate training. I mean, maybe not directly, but it's very closely related, in my opinion.
And the crate should be a safe place. I mean, that's another. I mean, my grip, when she's had enough for the day, she'll just go lay down in her crate. Like there's other spots she'll lay. Don't get me wrong, but when she's had enough, she'll just go lay down in her crate and she'll just go to sleep. And that's her safe place. Always has been.
Then it was introduced properly, I would assume.
Right.
I mean, it's not a place for timeout. You're not sending them there as punishment. We feed our puppies in the crate the first few weeks because that's the most positive association you can give an 8-week-old puppy is food. If I'm in here and I get fed, that's great. And you're going to notice me say that a lot because I'm a big proponent of using the drive for food in all of your early training. I mean, dogs work for food. Pack animals, coyotes, wolves, they hunt in packs. They work for their food. It's a very primitive instinct that they still have as domesticated animals. But I feed them in the crate. So that becomes number one, it's a positive association, but a closely related number two is how easy is it to teach the kennel command when they follow their dish in there?
Right.
Kennel, and they go in there and they get a jackpot of food, a whole bowl. It's not long before they'll just, so your original question, when do you start training? By 8, 9, 10 weeks of age, you have puppies that will get on place boards, sit for kibble, and load in their kennel almost on command. And you're talking 10 weeks old. And then you think years ago, people waited 6 months to start anything.
Right.
So think about how behind the curve think of how great some of these dogs are now, because by the time they're 6 and 8 months old, they're unbelievably obedient, and it just shows what they're capable of. I would recommend look up a guy named Pat Nolan. He's just a world-renowned dog trainer in general, but he's been involved in other types of animal training. I'm talking like dolphins at SeaWorld type of stuff. And this guy has fascinating material out there about puppies being socialized at young ages to the work they're going to do as adults and the differences they see. This guy works with the military and special forces type of dogs that they put an earpiece in a Malinois' ear, and a guy in another country can give that dog commands on the earpiece, and the dog will do what he says, crawling down a hallway, hiding behind this, all through remote communication. There's not even a handler there.
And that's crazy if you really think about it, because how much training do we do that have visual cues? Much of our training is visual. So to be able to do that all just off of audio commands is incredible.
I'm sure it starts that way, of course.
Right.
But the bottom line is, this is a guy that's, along with others, there's plenty, but think of the boundaries they're pushing, the conventional dog training, criteria that we all follow, that we all learn from someone. These guys are taking puppies at super young ages, and they're proving that they're capable of a lot of adult type of. Now it's different. You can't have the negative reinforcement on the same level, but they're using a lot of positive and behavioral shaping stuff. But dogs are habitual learners. Once they learn something, they default to it. And that's a good and a bad thing. In fact, I've had people tell me house dogs are at greater risk of learning bad behaviors because around the clock, their actions are being reinforced or not, knowingly or not. There's days if I'm in a good mood and my dog were to jump up on the counter, I'd probably pet him on the head and laugh about it because I just don't even think about it. And then the next day he does it and I shove him down and tell him no. Well, that's very inconsistent. A house dog gets that every day. Some days you reinforce behaviors without knowing it. Some days, you're actually conscious of it and you're trying to hold them to a higher standard. That's how quickly they learn and their influence. So it's there's a lot to it. And I think that's why it's so important with puppies. But again, I'm a huge proponent of rescue, actually, believe it or not. And so when I hear your story, it's doable with any dog at any age. They can all be trained. And again, you need to understand what it is you're after. What is your life like? And, certain breeds have innate qualities that will make them easier or harder for you as an individual, depending on what your goal is. So you need to read that stuff. You need to do your research. Yes, a breeder, but a breed. Right. Or narrow down to a couple breeds.
And some breeds are easier to train than others.
Absolutely.
They really are. I've jokingly, I've said in other podcasts with guys that are far more experienced grip trainers than I have, and we've kind of agreed, it's probably not the greatest first dog to train because they're kind of unique. The best way I heard it is from a trainer far better than me. His name is George DaCosta. He said you need a heavy hand and a white glove. And really what he's saying is you need consistency. They're super smart, so they almost train stubborn, but at heart, they're kind of on the softer side. They're not soft dogs by any means. They have a ton of drive, but they don't handle high pressure well all the time as a consistent thing for the breed. Whereas I made mistakes in my lab. I'll admit it. I was a young trainer and I had some bad days, and I wouldn't say I took it out on him, but him and I didn't have a great training session or end on a positive note. And after we made up, he didn't care. He forgot about it. He's like, whatever, let's get back on task. Let's just go do something. Whereas I can't make that mistake with her because she'll remember. So
yeah. Well, the reason you and I relate to have this conversation is because I was up at a pro trainer in Burlington, Wisconsin, and we were working pointing dogs tonight. And this is a 40-year trainer, Hall of Fame type, national level handler of pointing dogs, but he's an all breed trainer. And I love talking to him because he's got so many credentials in retrievers, spaniels, pointers. And he said exactly what you just said. I mean, the labs, the short hairs, they'll always be popular because they're forgiving. They have that nature of, even if you're hard on them tomorrow, they still want to do it. Now, Goldens, Chessies, apparently
Correct.
the Griffs, they have plenty of drive. They have plenty of talent. It's all there, and they're tough enough, but they take it personal. They have more feelings, I guess. And I've noticed it with our Goldens, and I hate stereotyping because I've had plenty of Goldens that they do not train any different. You just do it. I think, Brad, in my opinion, and this is coming from a guy who I was a little heavier in my earlier days as a trainer, I'll admit it. I think we've evolved just as human, let's say trainers, handlers.
Sure.
The technology's there. There's so many more people who have pioneered this sport and come up with methods and systems. And we don't need heavy pressure to teach dogs. And I know labs are known for being forgiving, but I have so many labs that I've seen that do not handle heavy pressure. So I don't care what anyone says about, oh, they're forgiving, they're this. Heavy-handed training will always probably give you the lowest percentage of dogs that make it through the program and succeed. You know, I can't help but think about how many phenomenal dogs were washed out because they were not trained, you know, in line with their personality or their demeanor. I think heavy pressure is fine once the dog is conditioned for the pressure and the correct response, and it's a taught thing. Heavy pressure on a dog that understands why is far different than a dog that's being trained heavily from the beginning. Because, you know, and everybody says, oh, this dog is soft. Oh, this dog is sensitive. Are you sure? Or are they unsure and it's coming across that way? And typically everyone's response to a dog clamming up is more pressure, which now you just manifested the whole thing into 10 times worse of a scenario than it was 5 minutes ago. I'm still learning how to read that myself. And so to me, I'd rather just go slow. And again, you asked about training puppies. Let's just start there.
Right.
Shape behaviors, build good habits. When a dog understands what's being asked of them, bringing pressure in later tends to go over pretty well. Because again, I have dogs.
That was a key thing. That was a key thing you just said there, and that's so huge. And that's something I struggled with, is when the dog understands what you want from them. Not when you just think they understand. Like you can see, like as your training progresses as a new trainer, you'll think, oh, my dog understands it. But you'll see there's really a difference between when, like I noticed that between when I thought they got it and when he actually got it.
I wish there was a way to bottle that and like hand it to people. You know, here's the real understanding of, does the dog know it or don't they? And it's something I'm improving at too. Okay. I mean, I've made every mistake under the sun, but you will see it in the dog's behavior. So again, it's so important with your puppies, you know, and regardless of what kind of genetics they're out of, but get those habits, because I think the best example, Brad, honestly, is probably the e-collar. You know, coming in and that's a controversial topic still today, even though the e-collar's come a long way. And I think the education's there now, and there's a lot of great products, but ultimately it's one of those things that it's a tool to reinforce what a dog already knows. And it does give you some extended control, you know, beyond a leash or a check cord, or, and this is all surface level, but if a dog is truly ready to be collar conditioned on their obedience commands, then on lead, they should be pretty sharp, pretty crisp. When I say sit, it's a boom. The butt hits the ground. They sit, they wait. They're not moving the second you move or the minute you say something. They're sitting firmly through distractions, all of it. And then you go ahead and bring that collar in. And if you use, whether it's a slip lead or a choke chain or a prong collar, I don't care whatever, you know, that e-collar ultimately is taking the place of that training collar that they were using with the lead. And so it should mean the same thing. And again, to your point, it won't be this big dramatic thing for the dog,
right?
You know? And so
And that's such a simple concept. If you think about it, if you break, like, all an e-collar does is enforcing a known command, and basically you're replacing the leash or whatever tool you were enforcing that command with. And I think that gets lost a lot. We could have a whole episode just on e-collars, I know.
Yeah.
But I think that really gets lost a lot because I see time and time again posts on Facebook. I'm thinking about getting an e-collar because my dog isn't doing this. Well, that's not going to fix it.
Yeah. Well, I've told people that. You're asking the wrong question, bud. I mean,
right.
You got to go back through and get this behavior licked way before you throw. And unfortunately, I mean, it's such a common thing, and I don't know where it came from. I really don't, but people talk about behavior and then go, well, just throw an e-collar on him and get him when he does it. You'll fix it. Well, holy cow. I mean, that's a loaded, gun waiting to explode. I don't know. And people do it in the field. It's like, well, my dog doesn't come back, so I put a collar on him. And when he flushed a pheasant and I missed and he ran to the horizon, I zapped him. It's like, words like zap in the first place are why these collars are so widely hated by a lot of people. But, you just condition that dog to potentially associate that correction with a bird.
Right.
And you want a bird dog. So what don't you get here?
I mean, it's very rare. There's only a couple of circumstances I've ran into personally where I've ever used a collar intentionally for a negative enforcement, right? Like a porcupine. We ran into a porcupine and I hit my grip hard as soon as she saw it because I don't want her to ever associate that smell with a good thing. Because there's way more to my grip is terrified of a vet where we have to sedate her and muzzle her. A porcupine to the face is literally worst case scenario for her and I. Because
not to mention what's the risk at that point. I mean, if she hates porcupines after that, I guess mission accomplished.
And that was really what my thought process was there because I don't want a positive interaction ever with a porcupine.
But here's what I will say. Here's what I will say. Just being devil's advocate, so to speak.
You're good.
I understand completely, and I would have done the same thing, but let's just look at where we could have gone wrong. If you have a dog that you collar conditioned on obedience, and I don't know what collar you run, it doesn't matter. Let's say it goes 1 through 8, okay? And everything you did was on a 1 or a 2, to reinforce here and sit. And if you broke your dog with flank pressure or belly collar, fine, no problem. But then to light them up on a 7 or an 8 with a porcupine when they've never been conditioned to a higher level of stimulation on things that they know, you still have a risk there because it's happening out in the field. It's happening in a hunting scenario. You're carrying guns. You're wearing gear. That is different than everyday training. My dogs, I swear, just through experience, they know the difference. So if a dog gets overly corrected in the field, they could be a little sheepish in the field because all those things are fair game to be associated with. They're associative learners, cause and effect learners. If this, then this. So if you're in your orange vest carrying your gun and you light them up on a porcupine, the logic's there. I would do it too. But now she might not want to quarter and get out and search because
she doesn't know why she said.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen again. So it's
now I will say I didn't roll it up like she's normally at, what is it, like a 3 or a 4. I only went like 1 or 2. I think I went 2 levels higher than normal. Like it wasn't some like max out, like continuous all the way back.
But a lot of people will do that.
Right. It was a strong enough shock where like she yelped and turned and came back to me and I let go pressure instantly then.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I mean, if it worked out, that's fine. And I think that's everybody.
But I know exactly what you're saying though, because there's always a risk when you take it is a gamble. Now, is it a educated gamble? Kind of. Could it have gone wrong? And like, what if there was a bird there? There was a possibility. Maybe there's a bird there too. I don't know. We're out grouse hunting. There could have been a grouse there.
That would be very unfortunate luck if there was. But I mean, my point is collar conditioning is one thing, but it's still about knowledge. Let's say collar conditioned is what? Okay, if you can say here with a nick on a 2 and the dog is proficient and just 100% comes in, heels, or does whatever your dog's supposed to do, are they collar conditioned? Well, they're definitely started on it, but can you go up to a 3 or a 4 or a 5 on here and turn the pressure off when they come to you? And even though they didn't do anything wrong, you're not turning it up to punish them. But you do have to condition them for the levels of stimulation that they may face. So if you ever think you may need to give that dog more pressure. Or if a dog is a repeat offender of something that you need to correct, because in retriever training, we sit them on a whistle on a blind retrieve and we give a cast, right? If the dog takes the wrong cast the first time, I just blow the whistle again and give them a chance to, right their wrong. I don't apply pressure right then and there. But if they do it a second or a third time, there will be a correction. I will sit them and I will administer just a nick, which just means, hey, no, pay attention here. We're going to do this. And if you get multiple offenses in a row, there's a chance you turn that collar up. But just remember, I'm turning the collar up because my dog has been taught what that means. They've been taught that when the intensity goes up, it's a more meaningful correction, and I need a change in behavior. I need you to take the right cast, or I need something. If you don't have that level of communication with your dog, with your collar conditioning, this conversation gets kind of iffy because it is unpredictable how some of them will take it. You can't surprise them on a 5 if they've only been run on a 2. And stim level shouldn't be as big of a topic as it is anyway, because if you can get by with a 2, it makes no difference. If a dog takes a 5 to respond, then fine, use a 5.
Right.
But who cares?
Right. You're using those levels just as an example, right? Because if your dog responds on a 2, you're going to train them up to a 5. And I never thought about something that way. I'll admit, I have never thought about doing that, because I've always been like of that school of thought where if your dog responds on a 2, you use a 2. If your dog responds on a 7, because that's just what your dog does,
sure.
right?
Well,
then it's on a 7.
Let me throw this at you, because I think the way you're thinking about it is how most people do. And 90% of the time you're right, which is why it doesn't become an issue for most. But just remember, when you train alone in your yard and your dog does everything perfect, but then you go to show all your friends at the barbecue and the dog doesn't do it with distractions, just remember recall out at the park versus recall when they're chasing a wounded bird, or they're flying, they're going towards a flying bird and getting near a road. A lot of dogs are seeing red at that point. They're not hearing the recall whistle. They're not listening. So you may have to intervene with a little higher pressure, especially if their safety's on the line, but it's unfair if they don't understand what that means and why and how to turn that pressure off. Just because they do it at a 2 forever doesn't mean if you light them up on an 8, you're going to get the same response. So and with the pointing dogs, I would argue it is just slightly different, because I'm not handling them on a blind retrieve. Now, your breed being a versatile breed, there's a lot of people running your kind of breed on blind retrieves and in NAVDA. And so, to me, it's all one and the same.
And going back to the club thing, I did actually do some training stuff with NAVDA, not with my dog. I went there before I even got her to meet the people at the club, to get a good idea what the club was like, to make sure it'd be a good fit, not only for me, but if I brought a dog into it. We never made it there because one of the issues I'm still working out with my dog is she is very, very aggressive with other dogs. Oh, very aggressive. So a club situation with her just wasn't going to be fair to her, right? It wasn't going to be fair, especially to the other dogs there. But I'm worried about their safety. Yes. I'm more worried about her anxiety, because she's my dog. She's my responsibility. And I wasn't going to put her in a situation where it wouldn't be beneficial for training. If she's on high alert, high anxiety level, because she has such a problem, like she has a huge fear of other dogs, especially any dog bigger than her. In my mind, I was like, what am I going to accomplish here if I'm working only on that and I'm not working on anything else?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. Plus why risk anything?
Right.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, and you know what? That's not anything her past could be part of that. You don't know, but I'll tell you what, there's just a lot of those breeds, a lot of labs, a lot of goldens, there's examples of that everywhere. Even if you got her as a puppy, that could have been how she is. Maybe
and I'm not blaming the guy beforehand. Maybe that was just her. You're right. I don't know that, but it didn't seem like the right choice for me to train with the club for that reason. But I do want to, training with a club can just be so big, though it really is. And I really wish, because the one thing you mentioned is like the backyard barbecue and the distractions, right? Mm-hmm. It's really hard to set up training by yourself unless you have maybe a good group of friends or something like that, where you can set up these training scenarios to put the distractions into it, right? Like fake hunt tests, like fake hunting scenarios, because your dog can be super steady in the park when you're throwing bumpers at the baseball diamond, right? But you put them out in the blind with the retrieving and the calling, and even how much more excited, like, because they feed off your body language. I mean, ducks are working in, like look at the videos of a safety clicking on a gun and the dog's head's up, right? I mean, they take all these cues, and if you're not training for that scenario, it's really hard to make a steady dog, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, we're here to talk about puppies. And again, it goes back to the play sport and the things that I was telling you about. I think what we've learned over the years is it's one thing to train the dog, but it's another thing to test it and push it and make and reinforce that taught behavior with, what do they say? That distance and distractions will erode control. So telling a dog to sit on lead at 2 feet from you and telling them to sit 10 feet away and telling them to sit 30 feet away or sit on a whistle at 100 yards, that's still all based on the sit command. But how far do you take it? How much distance do you put between you and the dog? And then you add distractions. So this is why I think, for anyone getting puppies, I don't care where you get them from, what you get them for. The puppy classes are great because just getting them in that environment is never going to hurt anything. It might have helped your dog as a youngster to be in a group setting. I don't know.
I don't either.
But you could have also maybe seen precursors to this behavior when she was 12 pounds and easy to correct. And you could have done things to discourage that behavior and rewarded her turning that off and doing something else. And you could have made a dent in it and fixed it. Could you do it now?
We have made a little dent. We have actually made a little dent. I have got her to the point now where she'll vocalize first and normally turn away. So It gives me enough time to get in there now. I know it's crazy. Like, don't ever break up a dog fight, right? Yeah. We're just going to put that out there. I have just whatever. But now I've got her to the point where she'll at least vocalize and turn away, which gives me normally enough time to remove her from whatever the situation is or get in between her and the dog. Which is a huge step because beforehand it was teeth on.
Well, it's good that you know that. Dude, this happens everywhere. And make no mistake about it, I've seen it at a retriever hunt test where the honor dog goes right out there and bites the working dog to get the duck. I've seen it. I was in the holding blind watching when it happened. There's temperament, there's sociability issues. You don't know the root cause, and to your credit, you're still working on it. The biggest thing, honestly, is if you and a couple buddies want to put 3-4 dogs on the ground and go chase pheasants, you have to be mindful of that. And so that's a bummer. That's a bummer, but the most important thing is that dog ended up in a great home and you do these things with her. And that's really all that matters. And you'll get more dogs in the future. You will.
Exactly.
You're a lifelong hunter and fisherman. You're going to have a sporting dog of some kind. It's just who we are. It's part of life.
Exactly. And I enjoy the training. I do. And I think that, I don't think you have to enjoy, I actually find therapy, if I can get myself I have to get myself in the right mental state of mind, which I've learned how to do over the years, to put my focus on the dog, leave my other stuff behind. And when I get to that point, when we're done, it's such a huge therapy session for me at the end of it too, because now I've only focused on her at this point in training. And then when everything's said and done, all that other problems I have are I kind of forgot about them all.
For sure. Man, it's addicting. We're all of us that do this love it. The people that I'm around are diehards. If we have a spare minute, we do another drill.
Sure.
And I have some buddies who make me look like I don't even like the sport. That's how obsessed they are. But it's, you know what? If you're going to have dogs, the best thing you can do is involve them in your life as much as possible. You'll have a better dog. I joke with everyone. It's my only vice. It really is. I'll drink socially. I don't smoke. We're not at the bar. My wife and I are not big bar flies. We'll go with you if there's a function, but it's not, this is what I do. This is how I spend my money poorly. This is how I spend my time. It's truly my worst habit, but there are far worse things you could be doing. So, it's a ton of fun. I think everybody's, I don't know what it is. It seems like there's a lot more litters of puppies out there. It seems like there's more and more breeders coming out of the woodwork. Maybe it's an illusion of money. Maybe it's an illusion of side money, side hustle kind of thing. It's a bad economy. People want to make a few bucks. I don't know. I hope it's a good thing. It sure seems like you can throw a stick in any direction. In the breed that I'm in, there's labs everywhere.
Sure.
You know what? And most of them probably are pretty good, which is fine. As long as there's a line out the door of responsible homes that are going to take these puppies and do the right things, I'm fine with it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could tell anybody with in terms of just getting a puppy. I mean, even if you don't go to a high caliber breeder, if you have friends with good hunting dogs and they have a litter and you take that dog home, all the steps are the same. And I can tell you right now, I mean, a well-bred lab to be a hunting retriever champion, master hunter type of dog in the hunt test game, that's a spectacular animal. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise, but it's very attainable. It's very attainable if you do the right things and you nurture the right behaviors and build that drive and just get that dog to understand, you know, how this work goes. To pick up 3 ducks and run a couple of blinds and just be under control, as impressive as it is and as complex as it really is, I'm making it sound so simple. It's not. But man, I don't want to say anyone can do it in a negative sense, but I think on a positive side, anyone willing to just join the club or get with the right group of people, so many more people could do this sport and have so much better dogs. And I think that's true whether you're running Griffs or short hairs or setters, spaniels. I don't care what. I truly believe that sporting dogs were bred to be companion animals and do a job with a handler, which is the key distinction. Their job involves being a team member, which makes them biddable and social and great family dogs. So, yeah, I mean, obviously doing this podcast, part of our goal is just to put our name out there. If anything, just to consult. I mean, if somebody wants help finding a dog, or if you ever need help in the future, you know, finding a dog or a trainer or a group or something, you know, I think we all kind of have to have some accountability to each other, help each other find the information they need. And that's kind of what got us all into these. Someone put their arm around your shoulder and taught you how to hunt. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They took, and so it's no different with dog training. And I just believe dogs make hunting that much better. If there's no dog involved, I have no interest. That's how
I agree.
serious I am.
I agree 100%. I'll go out for deer hunting to put a deer in the freezer, and just for the meat, and I'm in and out of the woods as fast as I possibly can be. I mean, to me, I feel I don't bow hunt because I could be out bird hunting with my dog, and I feel guilty sitting in a tree. I do, because I'm like, I would much rather be hunting with my dog. And it's not that I feel guilt. I would say I feel guilty because I know I'm sitting there. I'm like, my dog is sitting at home, and she would much rather be out hunting. And honestly, I'd much rather be out watching her hunt anyways. The only year I ever got into bow hunting was when my lab hurt his paw and he needed to take 6 weeks off, and it wound up in the middle of bow season.
Well, yeah. So you didn't have the choice. I mean, I've never bow hunted. It's probably something I should try, honestly, because I watch so much deer hunting during the season on TV and stuff. I think the land management, all that stuff is fascinating, truly. But yeah, I mean, I watch dogs work, man. That's what I do. And, you know, and because we kind of have gotten into other breeds, I get a real healthy dose of upland. Then we go into the hunt test type of training with the retrievers. So our dogs do kind of both sides of the spectrum. And then we dabble with, you know, some spaniels and some pointing dogs. And it's just a really good balance for me. But, you know, in turn, just as a breeder, you learn a heck of a lot. I mean, I've really taken things from spaniel training, especially in terms of upland and quartering, and spaniels are a very soft dog in general. I'm generally speaking, of course, but right. What they get these dogs to do in terms of quartering and control, and they do it with far less pressure than the retriever side of things. And then on the pointing dog side, I think just physical conditioning and the roading and I mean, the national championship in Ames in Tennessee just took place for all the pointers, and those English pointers, and there's one setter in there, I believe. That's a 3-hour brace. I mean, think of the ground they cover. Think of the physical demands of that. Everyone, the judges of the gallery, they're all on horses. Right. For 3 straight hours, that dog is sprinting, looking for birds. I mean, you really have to sit back and go for 3 hours. I mean, you know, they could go across an entire county. That's how much ground covering, you know. So it's super cool. I don't care what breed you're into, but, you know, getting a puppy, all the same rules apply. You know, like I said,
using the food to reinforce positive behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at George Hickox, who's a very well-known, DVD
Right.
type of training aid, which I think is a great starting point for somebody when they're looking at getting going. There's a guy who spends a lot of time with English pointers. Now, English pointers, as much as I love them, it's kind of a little closet thing that I have, is just this thing for pointers, but not a popular breed for a family dog, not a popular breed for a preserve hunter here in the Midwest, where we don't have, I mean, we're in Wisconsin. Yes, we can go to the grouse woods for sure. That's
Sure.
the only, and there's waterfowl, but there is no wild upland birds in Wisconsin of any real population in terms of pheasants, quail. We certainly don't have chuckers native to here, but you're talking about a breed that he still puts through clicker training, treat training, obstacles, place training. His DVD has a whole section on it. Why? Because the dog learns to be a team member. They learn that you are this vending machine of treats. And if they oblige these certain behaviors over time that they learn, they're getting fed. And as simple as that sounds, when that dog's a year old, you're in a whole nother level of communication and relationship with that animal. So you want to buy your puppies from people that understand this, because if they're happy with their dogs, truly happy and honest about their dogs, that's what you're going to get. If I'm doing my job right, I'm not going to breed anything that I wouldn't keep myself.
Sure.
Because if the puppies don't sell, or if I have puppies left over from litters, I'm a responsible breeder. That dog has a home here until the day it dies.
Right.
If it happens that way, it hasn't yet, because we really don't do breedings until we have, deposits, and we know that most of them are spoken for, but certainly things change. And so, I think a reputable breeder is more just about the quality of person.
Sure.
Anybody can get their hands on great genetics now. It's not hard. You can go out there and find litters out of phenomenal pedigrees, but you can't fall in love with pedigrees either. Titles are deceiving. They mean a lot. And I believe in them, and I promote our sports, but I will tell you this, a title is also somebody who was willing to either spend the money and time themselves to go do it, or had the money to send their dog to a pro to go do it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that a litter mate to that mother of the puppies that didn't go hunt test couldn't produce just as good of a puppy, right? Because genetically she's the same, right? You have two sisters from the same litter. One guy spends $30,000 to get a master hunter title, and the other guy just hunts his dog. But there's people that wouldn't want puppies out of the hunting dog.
Right.
I can't debate
I know exactly.
but
I know exactly what you're saying. But like you said, titles, they're important because it shows trainability, right?
They're
but
important. I'll never say they're not important, but man, again,
I know
just
exactly
like anything else,
saying.
It is not the Bible. It's not.
Right.
That alphabet soup thing, looking for titles. And honestly, what I've noticed with the retrievers is everybody's lining up for puppies out of these field trial dogs, and 9 out of 10 people are not running field trials.
Sure.
A hunt test is where 40 of us can sign up and run in a hunt test, and we pass or fail. What the other guy does doesn't impact what I do. In a field trial, you're going for first place. The rest of the dogs matter, because if you don't beat them, you don't win. And whether you're talking pointing dogs or retrievers, all age level field trial competition is the best of the best. It's the most complex. It's, you're talking 400-yard, 500-yard marks in some cases. In the pointing dog world, you're talking about dogs that go 500-600 yards out on the prairie to find birds. Are field trials practical for an everyday hunter? Not anymore. Field trials used to be about hunting. Now it's about pushing dog performance to the max. Well, I don't know many people making 400-yard retrieves on a duck hunt.
Right. And it's funny you actually say that, because we actually I touched base on a couple episodes ago. The guy, he's a big English pointer guy, trains with a guy out of Michigan. He's got a couple national championships under his belt. That his trainer does. And we've actually touched base on, like, for upland dogs, English pointers, and like he's bought a couple of his field trial washouts and whatnot, and we touched base on that. And it's like, people hear that word, like field trial washout, they're like, oh, it's like, who wants a washout?
Everybody.
Right. Like, for the average hunter, that dog's going to be more than what you probably need, and it's just because it couldn't handle that level of pressure and what that game actually takes.
Yeah, and it's wild, because even though I say all that, and I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but that's kind of what you need to do in this sport, is the field trial dogs are still going to statistically produce more talented puppies than the non-field trial dogs.
Sure.
But at the same token, I think a lot of your duck hunters, your pheasant hunters, or even your hunt testers who have never run a field trial, and I'm one of them. I've dabbled in some very low stake field trials like owner handler qualifying, which is basically entry level to the sport, and I haven't had success. And the dogs I'm running are way better than what most people have. And it just goes to show you how good these dogs are.
Right.
And so I don't mind going to, if I'm adding a dog to my kennel and I'm not keeping it out of one of my own, if I'm going to go outside my lines just to have something I can mix in, I don't mind going to hunt test dogs because I know that's what I'm doing with mine.
Sure.
You know, if I know what I'm doing with the dogs, that's the criteria I use. And so I would just tell everybody, don't be caught up in hunt test or field trial or hunting. Maybe go watch the dogs run. Maybe talk to the owners about, you know, how they were as puppies to train and what their strong suits are. Me, I want a good looking dog that runs with style, that runs with purpose, that loves to train and loves to work. But I need that dog to come in the house and let my kids pull on them and climb on them and you know, turn it off at night and lay down. And I know I'm describing what everyone says they want, but if you go buy something out of two thoroughbreds and you want to just a trail horse, you can't be surprised sometimes when you have too much animal on your hands, you know, especially
Sure.
if you're a novice handler, novice trainer, and you don't know what to do with that.
That's a good analogy. I mean, that makes sense too. And that goes all the way back to what you said is being honest with yourself and what you are as a hunter and a dog owner.
You're probably, I'm guessing, just getting to know you here talking, but I have a tendency to overbuy what I need or over engineer. You know, I need my 1500 crew cab pickup truck. That's all I really need. But I would sure love a 350 dually Lariat package that has all the bells and whistles. It's terrible gas mileage. I do not pull any trailers that would need it, but it would just be really cool to have.
Right.
And I've been that way with dogs too. But, you know, I also live on 10 acres. I have a kennel facility, and I am kind of equipped to deal with more of a hard charging working dog than a guy who's living in a subdivision, works 9 hours a day, has an hour commute to and from, you know. So the realistic thing is super important. And I've aligned myself with the right people, and I've dedicated a lot of years to learning this stuff, and I'm still learning, but I don't recommend people just go, well, I want something out of Field Champions that'll be the best dog ever. It might be, but also might be a tremendous challenge that you're not equipped for.
Right.
You know, and I'm again, what I'm saying is
it's
such
generalized. It's generalized.
Yeah, it's so not true. I mean, there's so many great dogs out of Field Champions. I don't mean to scare people from field trials, but it just doesn't make sense to be a duck hunter who needs a dog who can sit there for 6 hours if no birds come in and be quiet and be well mannered and not disrupt the blind, and versus Field Champions who come to the line and they literally run triples and quads, the shortest birds 200 yards, and they have enough drive to do a 200, 300 yard swim. I mean, they have horsepower and a motor that some people can't even fathom. I'm not saying it can't be a house dog, but don't tell me that dog will be a piece of cake if you're only going to walk it 20 minutes a day and put minimal time in. I mean, you're just setting yourself up for, you know, an unhappy situation for you and the dog, when in reality you needed more of a mild mannered animal. But no one goes into the dealership and says, well, I want the most badass V6 you have. You know,
right.
And it's unfortunately that's how some people are, you know. But I think you're seeing better animals today than you ever did. I think because of breeders. I think because of of people that understand just training. Our knowledge of how to train these dogs is so much better than it was even 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. That I think, you know, you're getting balanced temperaments, balanced brains. And we're also understanding how to get more out of dogs without being, you know, heavy and hard on them. So it starts with puppies and then it carries all the way up through. So I'm very long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. No, you're good. I do want to let this little bit of time go for you. I want you to let everybody know how they what your kennel name is, how they can find you, Facebook, Instagram, website, all that stuff. Because I definitely want people to be able to look you up. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're in Southeast Wisconsin, a town called Retriever. So probably, you know, as far south and east as you can get in the state. We're down by Kenosha. Our kennel name is Southfork Retrievers. Southfork is not really significant. When I bought 10 acres, I grew up in suburbia. So when I bought 10 acres, everyone joked. My parents watched the show Dallas in the 80s, and the name of the ranch was Southfork. So everyone joked that I bought, Southfork, because when you're from the suburbs, 10 acres is like a cattle ranch to them.
Sure. Love it.
So Southfork Retrievers just stuck. It's my wife, Helena, and I. We have 2 girls. We have Sammy Harms, who is our kennel manager, and she's basically full-time trainer, although most of her time is spent on our dogs in the program. She does take puppies and young dogs in on 2 or 3 at a time. She's got to make a living, and
Sure.
We offer that to our clients. We also have a few people that help out, or just really family friends, but they're part of the team. Michaela Crawford, her husband Robert. Michaela's real big in all the other dog games, not just hunt tests. She does barn hunt and nose work and agility. So we offer group classes to our clients, try to get all the puppies back, help build that foundation like we talked about. Our website is southforkretrievers.com. Pretty simple. On Facebook, it's Southfork Retrievers. You find us. Facebook's really good for us. It's kind of our main vehicle, honestly. We get private messages. People can look at all of our pictures. We do have Instagram, Southfork Retrievers, and those are linked together. So we post on one, we post on the other. But we try to post a lot of stuff from just our previous litters, people's pictures from home with their puppies, hunting photos. So we are a retriever kennel, labs and Goldens. I learned on Chesapeake, so anybody interested in Chesapeakes, I definitely have, a former mentor who breeds, and we guide at 2 or 3 local preserves. I think we were talking today. We think collectively our dogs probably saw close to 1,000 pheasants this year. Again, not any one dog, but just
right.
A lot of corporate hunts, a lot of 40, 50 bird shoots. So when you do 3 or 4 of those a week, it doesn't take long. But, we have a spaniel here that is from a mentor of mine. I just wanted to own one, and I love him. He's been a lot of fun, purely an upland dog for me. But, and then we mess with some pointing breeds, and that's because our goal is to ultimately become an all breed training program. I'm not going to be an all breed breeding program necessarily. I don't know that yet. Maybe, I'm crazy enough to try it, but it just depends. But yeah, I mean, retrievers is what we do. And I know so many people in the sport that anybody that called or emailed me, I can put you in touch with the right person for whatever your question or whatever you need. But yeah, I mean, we're trying to breed, family and field dogs. We're not a field trial kennel. As much as I strive to take my handling skills and my training skills to that level, I don't see us going down that road anytime soon, but absolutely high level hunt tests. We love that sport, and we love to chase pheasants around. We do. Even if it is preserve hunting, we still love it. I love watching dogs work, and it never gets old. So that's kind of what we're about. I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but.
Oh man, it was a great episode. I mean, there's a ton of knowledge here, ton of knowledge that you just put out. I mean, it was great. It really was. Like, you brought up things that I never even thought about, really. So it was good. No,
at least someone thinks so. At least someone thinks so. But yeah, hey, I'd love to do some training. We'll do some hunting maybe someday, or get you down here, let you run some retrievers.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, it'd be cool. We'll share this when it's up, and try to get our people turned on to this show. I know you talk a lot more than dogs on this show, which is awesome. A lot of content.
A lot of stories. A lot of my shows, like I kind of trying to change that a little bit. That's kind of why I wanted to do the puppy episode, because I also I love the stories. I love going back, telling stories, and just talking with people. Like, that's always been my show. But I want to sprinkle in some more knowledge too from people that are far more knowledgeable than me, so people can come back and look at some of these episodes and be like, "Hey, I'm getting a puppy. Oh, I want to go back, and listen to that again."
Man, there's so much more. I hate, you can't go longer than we have because people start turning it off. But,
right.
There's so much to what should I pick? How do I pick? Why do I want to be first pick or fourth pick? Or, so if you ever want to do a follow-up, if you ever want to talk more about it, just let me know.
We might have to make this a series. I'm going to have to think about that real quick. Maybe we will.
Promise
Maybe this will be the start of a series.
Time next time.
That's all good, man. Well, again, Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on. To all my listeners, thanks again for listening. I wouldn't do this if you didn't tune in. And as I've seen the numbers lately, I mean, I keep getting more and more of you tuning in. So really, thank you all. Thank you for sharing it. Thanks to all the new listeners coming in and sticking around, and to all the original ones too. So Again, Ryan, thanks. And until next time, keep chasing that experience.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You could support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes today.